So today is the fourth day of this period of the 15 days of miracles that commemorate a time in the Buddha's life when he performed various miraculous deeds in order to benefit sentient beings. And it's said that on each of these days, any merit, any virtue that we create is multiplied by 100 million times. So it's a great time to accumulate a lot of merit. And there's other days during the year as well where this happens. Have you ever wondered why? How? How does that work? Maybe you've heard an explanation, but I didn't hear any explanation for a long time. And then I was reading, some years ago, I was reading Geshe Zopa's commentary to the Lamrim Chenmo, Lama Tsongkhapa's great Lamrim. And Geshe Zopa's book is called The Steps on the Path to Enlightenment. There's actually 5 volumes, but in volume 1, he tells the story behind this. He said, at the time of the Buddha, there were 4 gods, worldly gods, devas, who made a vow to act as guardians of the Dharma. And from that time on, they did their best to protect and help Dharma practitioners during times of trouble. I was thinking maybe they're helping our Dharma friends in Ukraine and Russia right now. And another thing that these 4 gods do is on the days of the full moon and new moon, they take a look at what human beings are doing. And if they see people creating virtue, practicing Dharma, then they rejoice. They're like really happy to see people doing good deeds. And then, so I think that these 4 gods are actually the 4 great kings. Geshe Zopa didn't mention that, but from the story and other things I've read, it sounds like they are the 4 great kings who are also called the 4 heavenly kings, I think, in the Chinese tradition. And they're also the 4 directional guardians. And in the merit field, around the bottom edge of the merit field, you have these 4, I can't remember their names, they're rather complicated names, but each one is in charge of a certain direction, like east, north, and so on. And they live in the lowest of the 6 God realms in the desire realm. So there's lots of different Deva realms or God realms, but within the desire realm there are 6, and so they live in the lowest one. It's actually called the realm of the 4 great kings. So anyway, so they rejoice, and then they spread the news to all the other gods in their realm, and they all rejoice. And then the news gets spread to the gods in the next higher realm, and they all rejoice. And then and so on and so on and so on, up to the highest of these 6 God realms in the desire realm. So all those gods are rejoicing every time they see human beings doing virtue, creating virtue. And then, so Geshe Zopa says, because they are rejoicing, and rejoicing is itself a virtuous action. So they are creating the virtue by rejoicing in our virtue. And so because our virtue is the basis of all of that virtue, then that's how our virtue, our merit gets multiplied. It increases in proportion to theirs. So Geshe Zopa was saying this about the days of the new moon and the full moon, but my guess is that it applies to the other days as well, which usually are on a new moon or a full moon. Like the day the Buddha became enlightened was a new moon day, but that was like a really special full moon day. And because these 4 great kings had this connection with the Buddha, in fact, I read something this morning that they actually protected the Buddha from the time he was conceived in his mother's womb and gave him his first alms bowl after he became enlightened. So they have this connection with the Buddha. So it would make sense that they're rejoicing whenever anyone does virtue on a Buddha day. So I don't know about you, but I really like this story. I think it's quite inspiring, quite sweet to think that, every time we create virtue, even if we're just sitting in our room alone and no other human being is around to see what we're doing, but they know about it. And of course, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas know about it as well. And they are delighted, they are happy, they are joyful, and they're creating virtue as well. So it's wonderful that our little virtues can be a cause of so much rejoicing in virtue. And so these merit multiplying days are opportunities to really create a lot of virtue. And why do we need virtue? It's a bit like money in a way, because, we need money in order to buy food and clothes and shelter and so on and so forth. And so virtue is needed in order to experience these good results in the future, like good rebirths in our future lives, good experiences. Then, of course, liberation and enlightenment. Our ultimate goal is becoming enlightened so we can help all sentient beings. So, in order to achieve those things, we need virtue. We need lots of virtue, as much as possible. And so, these days are really good opportunities to create a huge amount of virtue. And there's also another way we can maximize our virtue. In the Lamrim text, there's an explanation of 4 factors that make our actions more powerful. And this works on the side of non-virtue, so we want to avoid that. But it also works on the side of virtue. So with regard to these 4 factors, working with these 4 factors, we can create more powerful virtue. So the first of the 4 factors is the object in relation to which we are creating the virtue. Some objects are more powerful than others. The most powerful object are our spiritual teachers, the ones who are teaching us the Dharma and guiding us in our practice and so on. So because they are benefiting us to such an extensive degree, then doing anything like making offerings, doing prostrations and so on to our spiritual teachers is more powerful than to other objects. And then in descending order after our spiritual teachers, there's the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, monastics, and then parents. Parents are also extremely important and precious for us. And then ordinary beings. So of course we can create virtue in relation to all of these different objects, but the degree of virtue will differ. And so in our practice that we do a number of times every day, we usually visualize the merit field. And the merit field consists of all our spiritual teachers, as well as those of the lineage, and then all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and so on. So we're visualizing all of those powerful objects of virtue. And that way we're able to create a huge amount of virtue in our daily practice. And also we're advised to imagine all sentient beings, all mother sentient beings around us when we're practicing, so that they can get the benefit as well. So that's like making an offering to them, doing something beneficial for them. So just by doing those visualizations when we're meditating, doing our prayers and practices, we're creating a huge amount of virtue. The second of the 4 factors is the subject, the person who's creating the virtue. And it's said that if we take precepts and we're holding precepts, that makes the virtue we create more powerful. So if you have like the precept of not killing, one person has that precept, another person doesn't. And they're both doing the action of not killing, refraining from killing. But the person who has the precept creates more virtue than the one who doesn't. And so holding precepts, the pratimoksha precepts, like the lay vows, the monastic vows, bodhisattva precepts, tantric precepts. So holding those in our continuum, as many as possible. But of course, you have to be willing to keep them. Don't just rush out and take a bunch of precepts, but not keep them. So we do have to be serious about keeping them to the best of our ability. But having those as part of our continuum means that whatever virtue we create will be much more powerful, much greater than those who don't have the precepts. And the third factor is the action, what it is we actually do to create virtue. So some actions are more virtuous than others. For example, giving, practicing giving, generosity is a very virtuous thing to do. But it said that giving dharma is more powerful, more virtuous than giving material things, which makes sense because that's what people really need. That's what beings really need. They need to know the dharma so they can create the causes for themselves to get out of suffering and reach enlightenment. And you don't have to be a dharma teacher to be able to give dharma. One way of giving dharma is when we do our prayers and our recitations, like here at lunch, after lunch every day, we're reciting either a text or a sutra, when we recite mantras and so on. If we imagine all living beings present around us, hearing and getting imprints on their mind from those prayers and sutras and so on, that's a way of giving dharma. So anybody can practice that. We can do that many times each day when we're doing our prayers and mantras and sutras and so on. And also, it said that if we do something continuously rather than occasionally, that also increases the merit. So, for example, if we have a daily practice of making offerings on our altar, or doing prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, we do that every day, that also increases the merit, as opposed to just once in a while doing it. So living in Sravasti Abbey, we have many opportunities to create powerful virtue. The fourth factor is the intention or motivation. And so depending on our motivation, an action will be more or less powerful. So the best motivation is bodhicitta, which we always try to generate every morning and all throughout the day, having the bodhicitta motivation for the things that we do, then the virtue becomes huge, tremendous. And so these factors show us how we can maximize our precious human life and our Dharma practice. So having precepts, some of us have like the maximum number of precepts there are, or full ordination plus bodhisattva plus tantric V6. But even if you don't have all of those, just whatever number of precepts you have, that is a wonderful thing. And then doing practices every day, like making offerings, doing prostrations, and so on and so forth, doing that continuously. And doing it in relation to powerful fields, the field of merit, our teachers, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and so on, and of course sentient beings. And doing all these things with the bodhicitta motivation. So these are ways we can create huge amounts of merit, especially on days like today, merit multiplying day. So the gods must be just going crazy with joy. And we still have another 12 and a half days to go during this period of time. So I hope this little talk has, given you some inspiration to create as much merit as possible. Let's really make good use of this opportunity.